of the challenge facing public education countrywide in the United States, not just the El Paso district, which I'm sure is better now than when it was.
We hope.
When you arrived.
And so as a country, state across all of our states, we spend education and healthcare are essentially more than 50% of every state budget. So these are the two major issues that I think we need to really focus on.
And two major issues that I dare to say everybody agrees are screwed up, too expensive, and need to be fixed.
Absolutely.
The healthcare system and the public education system. Regardless of, I don't know of anybody who thinks that either one of those systems are good. Doesn't matter what your politics are.
Absolutely.
There's common ground there. If you want to,
if you want
to end an argument, if you want to end a political argument we were having, someone turn the topic to the sad state of public education or the tragic sad state of healthcare. And things will cool down a little bit because you'll start to agree, I'm sure. Anyhow, what do you see? What do you see as the main difficulty with this? You and I had a private conversation last time you were out here in California, and this is something that I'm certainly not a professional educator, far from it. But back when I was in my 20s, it occurred to me that the system was bass-ackwards. People in education would start out to be teachers and aspire to become administrators, so their pay would go way up. And I think that's exactly backwards from what it should be. I think the highest paid people should be the teachers and the best teachers. And you and I agreed.
I think we do. I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. As we look at, in fact, one of the projects that I'm working on with some of the trustees and other educators around the country is that how do we turn the pyramid over? In other words, right now the highest paid folks aren't in the classroom, and we're not very lean or efficient, or I don't think we're very good steward of our resources at the central office. And you're right, many of our best folks in schools want to move up and probably don't want to leave the classroom, but they simply want to do it to make more money and bring more prosperity to their family. And we've got to try to create a system, and that's one of the things that I'm passionate about, trying to figure out how we use technology, how we really bring districts into the 21st century on the operations side and on the efficiency side, so that we can drive fewer dollars, we can get more money to the classroom by spending less outside of the classroom. And it's exactly what you said. Our best and brightest teachers should stay in the classroom. And I'll tell you what else will happen. You will get better teachers. We talk to kids all over the country when we were recruiting folks. And there's a line right around six figures, 80, 90, 100,000 a year. If a student in college could know that they had a possibility of making that kind of money as a teacher,
instead of half that,
they would choose other careers. They really would. So we know that there are many, many folks out there that would choose this career if we could pay them a bit more. But we also need accountability, right? I'm not just saying more money without making sure that we're doing a good job in the classroom. I think that, in my mind, I'd like to pay higher salaries, but I also like to have some kind of a variable pay that would move as they had a greater impact on kids.
Merit pay for sure. Okay, well, that's sort of a neat idea. And has anybody? To me, it's a no-brainer. Does anybody ever talk about it in the profession?
So I think one of our challenges, let's talk about, there are public school districts like mine, 140 years old. Every major city has their named district, we call it.
Right.
These are all 100 plus years old. They have become bureaucracies, right? You've got folks that have worked there for many, many years. That's a different challenge than the suburban districts. We also have, everywhere in America, the suburbs have exploded. They've grown. So these districts are relatively newer, 50, 75 years old. You'll often find, their facilities are in much better shape. And many times, it's not necessarily true, but they're not as bureaucratic because they just haven't been around as long, right? They're newer, more modern out in the burbs. And then, of course, you've got charter schools and private schools.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah.
That has a good ring to it.
What does?
Charter schools.
Well,
when someone says charter schools, it gets my attention because for some reason, I look at charter schools or the concept of charter schools as being a better education for the kids than public schools.
Well, that's a misnomer. Okay, I'm going to tell you,
so
charter schools are nothing more. In 1992 in California, there was actually a bill passed in the state legislature to charter schools. That's essentially what they were, to charter a new type of school that had more flexibility and didn't have as much of the bureaucratic, regulations around it. It started in California, and the whole concept was just to create potentially an environment that if there were less regulations, would better serve kids. So we took that charter from California, and then we created this new concept of charter schools around the country. And then you've got people like you that think, oh, if it's a charter school, it's got to be better than a public school. At the end of the day, a charter school is still
it's not fair for me to think that way, but I do, and
common.
I think a lot of people.
Oh yeah,
do.
Absolutely, no.
Yeah, if it's not a public school, anything but a public school is better than a public school.
Absolutely.
That's my impression, and I believe a lot of people share that.
You're exactly right, and I think to be fair, statistically, they're not performing better than the majority of public schools. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, they're just people like you and I. You and I could open a charter school and hire the best teachers that we could find and bring them in. And many times, remember, these charter schools have 4,000 or 5,000 kids, 10,000 kids. They're educating. Parents make the choice to put their kids into a charter. So what you end up doing is you automatically get a better class of kids than the ones in my district, for example, that may not have parents educated enough to make that choice.
Yeah.
Right? So you're skimming a little bit. But at the end of the day, the success of a charter school still depends on those people, those individuals.
The quality of the teachers.
Absolutely. Right? So if you and I get inspired and open a charter school, and then 5 years later we go off and want to do something else, and we don't pay as much attention to the school, it doesn't matter that it has a charter school label. It may not be a good school anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So it still goes back to the people that are taking care of your kids, whether they're in a public, charter, or private. It's the quality of the educators and the quality of the system that's really going to make a difference.
All right. How do we raise the quality of the system?
So, and I actually think, so this is going to sound like I'm going back on what I said. I think charter schools have been good from the sense of bringing competition. So they've shed a new light on a different way to educate kids. And I think private schools do this in a lot of ways, but people go to private schools typically for different reasons than charter schools, right? But I think charter schools have helped us from the standpoint that they've looked at education a bit differently. They've approached it in a different way so that, we take, for example, my school district, we've been to visit a number of charter schools and simply to try to see, are they doing something different than us, something where we could better engage and better serve our students? Are they doing something that would be better served for our kids in El Paso?
And are they?
There are some innovations that we've seen, but I've also seen a lot of those at public school districts.
Uh-huh.
So we try to find pockets of excellence that we can emulate, that we can mimic, right, instead of reinventing the wheel. But those are at charter schools and at public schools. Again, it goes down to leadership and people and just having that passion to do whatever it takes for kids. That's the hard part about this work. You've got to get the content knowledge and you've got to have a pedagogy in terms of the way you teach. But at the end of the day, it's having an attitude of doing whatever it takes, because every kid comes to you with different needs, different situations, financial and otherwise. And guess what? Their lives change over the course of the 12, 13 years that they're with you. So you've also got to adapt to their needs in addition to, initially trying to identify where the gaps are for them. It's a hard business. It's not at all like making widgets. It's not black and white. There's no easy answer. It's just rolling up your sleeves and a lot of hard work. And so we have to do at central offices, make sure we support the people that are doing that hard work.
But the metrics are readily available and tell an accurate story, right? Mm-hmm. Test scores.
Yes.
So, and the proof is in the pudding.
Well, but it all depends how you define a successful school. So Texas started, I don't know if you know this, but Texas started this testing that we have across the country. It started in the 90s. In fact, Ross Perot had a commission put together by the governor. They wanted to have accountability, and I actually liked the premises sound. The premise was, how do I know that, Juanito in Brownsville is getting the same education as Juan that lives in Dallas? How do I know?
It can never be exactly the same because they have different teachers.
They can't be the same, but think about this.
But a curriculum could be standardized.
That can, but they didn't have a measure. So the idea was, let's build a statewide test that every child takes, And if we're going to spend billions out of our state budget on education, let's try to compare them to each other to see if we are getting the same bang for our buck, if you will.
Right.
So that premise is actually sound. You can't argue with that premise. It makes sense. Where I think we lost our way is that we started increasing the number of exams year after year after year, and then the curriculum was narrowed, because then with so many exams that are accountability and measurement, then teachers and administrators started teaching to the test. That's all they did. Was essentially, we lost our way in school. It wasn't about a holistic, broad education to expose children to different concepts. It was about getting ready for the standards to be tested in April and May. And that's what's happened over the last 20 years. And I really think we've destroyed public education, and now we're trying to find our way back to still have accountability, still have measures. Look, when you and I were a kid, we just took the Stanford or the ITBS once a year, and they told your parents, hey, Mike's on grade level or Mike isn't. Mike's doing well, Mike isn't. But that was it. Right? We didn't teach to the test. We took those tests. We all took those tests. I mean, I went to school here in California. But when it turned into an accountability measure, again, the premise was sound. So I don't dispute that we needed some accountability for the billions that we're spending. But we just went too far. So now we've got to find a way back, make sure that we have a holistic education. I mean, this doesn't even start with the fact, I've got a whole other issue with public ed, right? In the knowledge economy, we've lost our manufacturing prowess. This country is basically built around a lot of what we're doing in the Silicon Valley. It doesn't matter the sector you're in, technology is changing everything. And you talk to some folks. We had dinner with a good friend Thursday night that said artificial intelligence is going to take away 80% of the jobs that we see today in the next 20 years. Right?
I thought he said 100%.
He did say 100%, but I think he's crazy. Let's say 80%. So then you start thinking, is our job to teach kids to memorize and learn data and learn those standards? Or is our job to teach them how to collaborate and think? Right? That's different than memorizing. You and I were taught to memorize the Declaration of Independence and the 50 capitals and the presidents.
And the Haftorah for me.
The Haftorah?
Yeah. I didn't learn to speak. I shouldn't admit that. Change the subject. Change the subject.
Yeah,
change,
I think I know more Yiddish than
you.
You do not. You don't know Hebrew.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're learning it.
Yeah, I am.
God, that's amazing.
I'll teach you.
We have J.E. Cabrera as our guest. He's the superintendent of schools at in the future, I think you're going to be hearing a lot more from him, because he's an amazing guy. We've sort of reconnected after my becoming acquainted with him when I was doing video work with his dad, who was also in the education department in California in the 70s.
70s, yes.
Yeah, and here's his name is Juan Eduardo Cabrera, but I know him as J.E. because that's what his dad used to call him back then. So I call him J.E. now. It's just hard to get out of the habit. I should be calling him Doctor, whatever, Sir. But but what I like about this man is that he pulls no punches. He doesn't. He when there's something wrong, he addresses it. He's doesn't dance around it. And so I think what you want to do by partnering with tech companies that are interested in education is very noble. I really do. I think that's great, and I think you're going to be successful, because we're all looking for answers to the greatest problems facing us, and two of those greatest problems are the state of healthcare and the state of public education. If you want to join the conversation, you're certainly welcome to do so. The phone number is 831-479-1080. The email address is mine, mz@ksco.com. I don't have the email open, but I do have the phone open. We do have one caller, and that would be Paul in San Francisco. So let's put Paul on the air. Welcome him to KSCO with J.E. and MZ.
Hi.
Hey, Paul.
I didn't catch your last name.
His last name is
it's Cabrera.
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 Yes, sir.
I have a very important education question. I'm a candidate for the San Francisco Board of Education.
Okay,
and,
great.
My campaign is based on this. I believe that the Center for Disease Control needs to do a comparative study of normal children, that is unvaccinated kids, compared, like my kids, compared to those who are vaccinated who've been exposed to aluminum in the vaccines, because there's a lot of evidence that autism is being caused by the aluminum in the vaccines. Would you support a study? This study has never been done by the CDC, yet it's by law required. No drug can be sold in the United States, used in the United States, unless it's been approved by the CDC. You probably know this. But
yes.
No study has ever been done. Well, this was just a big debate before Congress last year.
I thought it was the FDA, but I guess I'm confused.
The CDC,
Center
Congressman,
for Disease Control,
Congressman Dan Burton was questioning the head of the CDC and asked her 4 times point blank, have you ever done a study, a comparison study of unvaccinated kids and vaccines? And she would not answer the question until the end. She finally said, no, we've never done the study.
Well, so let me jump in there. First of all, I want to tell you thank you for agreeing to serve. I think one of the biggest issues that hasn't been addressed in education public yet is that we don't have enough folks running for school board. So thank you for putting yourself out there to serve. We need to do a better job around the country of making sure more folks run for school board. With regard to your question, I mean, I think one of the issues we're facing in public ed, and I'm not going to answer whether I'd support it or not. Let me just give you some background. We are learning more and more that what we do in terms of wraparound services, so what happens to a child before school, after school, evenings, weekends, summers, holidays, how they're treated, how their health, their family situation, socioeconomic status, it does make a difference in education. We know that. So I think what we're going to see increasingly, and this is a partnership, I would think, with the state legislatures and working with our health departments, we're going to have to coordinate and collaborate a lot more. And we've got some ideas. One of the companies we're visiting with was talking about bringing some healthcare into the schools. I think we're going to have to be much more aware of the external factors that impact children and their ability to learn and be ready to learn, right? So increasingly, one of the conundrums in schools is that we're getting less money, but we're being asked to look at more, such as wraparound services, tutoring, and again, socioeconomic status. How are the kids socially, emotionally, and healthy outside of school? All of these issues are factors that school districts can't handle alone, but we know are critical to the success. So I would support, sir, something, I'm going to support anything that helps our kids' social and emotional, healthy well-being to be better prepared for learn. What that is and what shape that would take at a particular school district, but we just, I think
I have
that
a question.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Would you support the law that requires the CDC to do a comparison study of unvaccinated and vaccinated kids, which Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who I'm working with, is calling for? And this study is supposed to have been done before you can have mandatory vaccinations in California. California is violating the federal law, and we need to do a comparison study. My 3 kids went to school in San Francisco, and every time the school told me, you have to vaccinate them, I said, no, thank you. I didn't go to law school. I didn't go to medical school to have you tell me how to run my healthcare. I believe in prevention medicine. I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer.
Yes.
And I know the science. So would you support the CDC doing the study?
Yeah, I absolutely. I think that would make sense. I actually thought, at least in our school district, we won't let you in without the vaccine. So maybe Texas is different than California. So in California, you said it's the law, but you're still allowed to bring your kids into public school. You just sign a waiver, I guess.
Yes. Well, here's what you do.
What about HR 277? What about that? I thought that passed.
I'm a doctor.
And I'm very much against it, by the way. But go ahead.
Okay, I'm a doctor. Let me tell you what the exception is that every parent has the right to. If you go and get a DNA test of your child, and it shows there's a defect in the DNA of your child that could be triggered by a vaccine, that's the exemption that you can now use in California.
Wow.
And I'm helping.
That didn't happen right away, did it? That had to be fought for. Am I right?
Well, no, it's a medical thing. You go and get a DNA test, and it's medical proof that your child is defective in this one gene, and if vaccinated, it will trigger the defect and will cause autism. This is a scientific fact. And so
Okay.
this is one of the exceptions that's allowed in
Wow,
California.
well, that's great. I didn't realize there were any. That's why I was so, much against the law.
I'm totally against it too. It's the have you seen, Mr. Cabrera? Have you seen the movie Vaxxed?
He's asking.
I have not seen it, no, sir.
Okay, well, there's an actual
Gotta see
TV
it.
channel now called Vaxxed TV, which you can see parents testifying. Okay, my child was vaccinated, and 2 hours later, my child went into a terrible collapse in which they would not stop screaming for 3 days. And then after that, they couldn't read and write. They couldn't recognize who I was. They stopped functioning. They spin around on their toes. They wave their arms, and that's all they do. And if you have not
Sounds
seen that
crazy,
movie,
J.E., but I've seen this movie, and it's
Okay.
very powerful.
Wow.
Anyhow, Paul, thanks for calling 479-1080. We have almost a full board here.
And
Let's
good
go
luck.
next
Good luck
to-
on your race.
Yeah. And here's Steve in Pacific Grove about education. Go ahead, Steve. You're on with MZ and JE.
Hey, I love your work, fellas. In a perfect world, I mean, I like the way the Europeans do it. If a kid has a certain vocation, and instead of like letting him go to community college and spending all that money in a regular university, if they have a certain knack towards something like mechanics or being a lawyer or chemistry or healing or whatever, I think they can figure that out when they're 15 or 16 like they do in Europe. I don't understand why. I know it costs a lot of money and your hands are tied, but I mean,
No, I actually
there
think,
any way-
Steve, you're right.
Go
I mean, I think everything's up for grabs. As we talk about, if you heard me earlier on, I said, I think education is evolving into preparing kids for a different sort of life. And I think we're going to move into a competency-based, personalized learning environment. Technology will help with that to really begin to identify strengths, interests, values. What would you like to do? And I want to move into more what we call like an experiential learning environment where we get away from sitting in rows and desks and just memorizing and, getting ready for the
that's
junior.
why I agree. That's why I dropped out when I was 13. It was just like I don't want to learn the periodic chart. I haven't used it since. I mean, I want to go kick some butt and do my job. I mean, that's what I want to do. And I'm really glad to hear what you're saying, sir. I appreciate it very much.
One of my favorite Facebook, a good friend of mine who's a teacher will post about once a month, say, another month gone by and I haven't used a periodic table this month.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Take care,
Okay.
Steve.
Thank you.
You bet.
Bye.
Here, okay. Let's see who's up next. I'll just say take next, but I have to have the right thing on the screen here. So let me see. Okay, take next. Next is Mike in Aptos about education. Mike, you're on.
Hey, good subject, Michael, and great talk last week. Anyway, I have a question for your guest. My wife works for the school district, and I won't even name it. And I could tell you over and over the waste, and the biggest joke in our family when it comes to waste. I always say, "Oh, it's for the kids, right?" And and you're a lawyer. Where do you see, from your experience? Because I see a lot of our school district is scared to death. I mean, they're always getting sued. There's some of the kids, autistic kids, some of the parents. When the kid gets off the bus, they're videotaped. Some of the parents sue the school district where they have to take cabs to school, and it just seems like there's just mass confusion. And also in California and like in Los Angeles, where maybe you have, and this is not exaggerating, 50 different languages. It just seems like, how are they ever going to get a grip on things? But from your perspective, where do you see the biggest problems, in all honesty?
Wow, that's a that's a whole show
Yeah.
we could do together.
Especially
I think-
the honesty part.
Yeah,
No, I'm only kidding.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things, coming in, I started this at 48 years old, so I had a lot of years behind me and outside of the district. So I always actually try to approach it from the lens that you just shared. How do we fix this? How do we make this better? Where do we go from here? And I think, two things that are really soft. There aren't hard fixes, but I don't think we do a great job of three things of taking care of our students and families, and I think we could do a lot better of taking care of our teachers to create a better work environment. And then I think we're horribly inefficient with the way we spend our money outside of the classroom, and those are big buckets. But I'm telling you, if we improve the student experience and make it a personalized learning environment where we're working on what engages that child and where they need to go, and you need technology for that. If we did a better job of also understanding the particular needs and interests of every teacher, we homogenize our workforce just like we homogenize the students. We just teach to the middle, and we can look. And I'm guilty of this too. We're going to get better. We have 4,000 teachers in my district, and I think we can do a lot better. And a lot of this is going to have to happen with bringing technology into our operations so that we're much more efficient in the way we spend our dollars outside of the classroom. We get better data and sort of a dashboard of what's going on. We treat our employees better. And we need some of that technology to get that immediate feedback. And if we can personalize education in a way that better supports children's individual needs, not just teaching to the group of 30 kids, I think we'll get better outcomes. So as I'm dreaming about the future in those three big buckets, we're looking at how technology innovation can help us turn districts into more 21st century professional learning machines, not just schools in the way we know them.
Yeah, because it seems like
Okay.
I am. It seemed like my experience from the outside looking in, it's especially when you're talking the very top, for people just climbing a ladder to get to their last 2 years of being a superintendent and retiring with $100,000 a year pension for the rest of their life. It's breaking the system, and it's not always for the kids. I feel like it's a big joke at times with what they're doing. My daughter's a teacher. My wife is in administration in the school system. And just to give you a real quick example, my daughter started her first year last year. She went to a class that was an empty classroom, no desk. The whole class was in disarray. No files on the special needs for the kids. No books. It was just a big joke. And then the whole school district got, like a 10% raise because of a bond here in California. So it just seems like there's a lot of, mass confusion going on in the system. So I don't have a lot of hope for it myself.
So should it just be scrapped and started?
Well, Michael, when you said, remember the charter schools, I thought like charter schools would be like this. We'd have a bunch of different experiments, and maybe a lot of them would fail, but sooner or later some of them would come up with a better system, and we'd start copying them. That was the hope I had in the charter schools. But
well, that's what JE says that they do. But you copy the good parts of not only charter schools but public schools, because there's some of that.
Yeah,
too.
but
so
it's been going on for years. I haven't seen the good parts. I hope they're adopting something. But another thing, that lady, she's an Asian lady in Washington, D.C. She was on 60 Minutes where she really revamped the system over there. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Tell me, Michelle Rhee. She was the chancellor of D.C. Public Schools, I think, probably about 5 years ago.
Yeah, she just really thought out of the box, and a lot of people hated her because she came against maybe the unions, and but she actually did some really good changes, and we need to think out of the box. So, good show, Michael, and I'm glad.
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words here. Okay, that was thank you, Mike and Aptos. Now we're going to go to. Well, wait a second. It looks like hold on just a second here. Let's see. Oh my gosh, we have Georgia. Hi, Georgia.
Hi, MZ.
Great
show
Here
today.
You are calling the Saturday special.
Yeah. Juan, there was an article recently in the Wall Street Journal. I don't know if you saw it, but it was asking if American educational progress is being hobbled by parental entitlement. That perhaps we need to start paying attention to Chinese schools. Now, this American woman put her son in an elite state-run school in Shanghai, and she believes that we have something to learn there. Now, she used the example of the Chinese teacher forcing her little kindergarten son to eat cooked eggs. Now, she forced him to do this 4 times before he actually swallowed the eggs. That was his first week in kindergarten. Now, the American mother was furious. She walked in to complain to the teacher, and the teacher asked her, well, how would an American teacher have handled that? And the mother said, well, the American teacher would have explained the benefits of eating eggs, the nutrition, yada, yada, yada. And the Chinese teacher says, well, does that work? And the mother said, no. So the Chinese teacher believes that parents get in the way of the teachers, and she quotes Confucius, whose entire philosophy was based on top-down authority and bottom-up obedience, giving direction to these kids' lives. Now, the Chinese kids are trouncing our kids in early math skills, problem-solving skills. Our Ivy League schools are enrolling 8 times more Chinese undergraduates than a decade ago. These Chinese are helping to launch Silicon Valley startups in disproportionate numbers. So, Juan, do we have something to learn from these Chinese, and are we too easy on our kids? I would also like to ask you to please address whether there is more social engineering going on in the classroom than education. What do you think, Juan?
Good. That's an interesting point. I because one of the areas we struggle with, we learned so. I actually do think. I mean, obviously, we have more helicopter parents than we've ever had. And I'm a peer to many parents, and I see what we do now, and it's much different. I mean, you can probably relate. I grew up in San Jose, and I think I'd get on my bike at 8 in the morning, and my mom didn't know where I was till sundown. I don't think that happens with any of our children anymore, right? But here's the conundrum with applying it to the classroom. I do believe more discipline. And teaching folks grit is very important. I think that's part of what you're getting out of that example you spoke about in the Chinese school. Mm-hmm. But the other aspect that we know is that if we have involved and educated parents, 99 times out of 100 we're more successful in school. So there's a conundrum, is that an involved, educated parents that supports a child when we're not with them. Remember, we only have a kid for 174 days in a year. So not only is that only half the calendar, but that's only 7 hours a day, Georgia. So when we put a lot of pressure on schools, and I am not making excuses, we need to do better, and we will do better. But when you think about half the year and only 7 hours of those days, if we don't have an educated family, parent, aunts, uncles, community like we used to have, it's really hard for the school to just make the difference on their own. 9 times out of 10, the kids that are most successful have educated, supportive parents at home. Here's the issue,
I agree.
Though. When they cross the line,
mm-hmm.
When they cross the line to what you said, I do agree it's detrimental. So the issue is,
if anything, in this country, I thought it would be just the opposite, that the parents are not as involved as they should be with their child's education.
I think what you'll find, unfortunately, what Georgia's mentioned, and it's true, more educated parents many times end up getting more involved and intrusive into that, and they can cross the line to where it's no longer a positive influence. It's actually turns potentially into a negative influence if you're coddling kids too much. That's my own personal parenting perspective. I agree with Georgia on that, but here's the thing, Georgia. As somebody that's trying to make sure that our kids are supported at home, I'd almost rather have a parent that pushes that line than no parent at all at home, because it concerns me about what happens to those kids evenings and weekends or when they're not in school. Some of our kids come to school to eat. I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah, it is. No, parent involvement is critical, but 7 hours a day of influence on our children and what is being done with all this social engineering is of great concern to me, Juan.
Talk to me about that, Georgia. Give me some more, just rather than the broad
I'm talking
term.
about the gender confusion. I'm talking about the encouragement of little children, 5-year-olds who may be told that, oh, you think you're a boy, but you know what? You're exhibiting little girlish traits, and that's okay. That's completely unacceptable.
Something tells me that doesn't happen in Texas, but it's happening a lot here,
Georgia, are you going to hijack this show and take it from an education show to a gender
I'm
show?
not. No,
I'm just joking.
You asked.
No, I'm joking.
I'm just talking about the social engineering going on.
Well,
and I want to talk to you about that too.
Okay, let's talk about it. I think that's a farce. It's at least that I know of. Look, I'm one of 16,200 school districts, not including charter school districts. So, the teachers close the doors, and we are not there in their classrooms. I mean, part of that is we train them, we coach them, we support them, and it's their classroom. I can tell you what we espouse and we talk about is that we take every kid, and we should not be talking about or influencing them with regard to those sorts of issues. We just support whatever situation is presented and making sure that they feel comfortable and safe. Look, a child cannot learn like anybody without, if you have been fed, you're not safe, and you're comfortable, you're not going to learn. We need to do it. So what I tell our teachers is make sure of that. That's it. talking about social engineering and pushing them a certain way. I do agree that's not our job, and we shouldn't be doing that. And I know there's a big debate in higher ed that colleges are doing a lot of that as well. And look, to me, that's
and they're
not our role.
also teaching certain segments of our population, the white segment, to be ashamed of their race and ashamed of their skin color. I mean, Juan, things are really out of control. I talk about this constantly every week at KSCO. I have example after example of what is happening, the shaming of our kids, the apologizing for their white privilege. I mean, none of this belongs in the classroom, Juan, at any level. Wouldn't you agree?
No, I don't. And, look, if I knew of any, in either way, right, either against either any sort of racism or reverse discrimination as yours, that is not acceptable. And if we find anybody doing that in my school district, they will be removed from the classroom.
Yeah, well, it's happening all over the country. But I appreciate your dedication to trying to make our schools better. God knows we need it because the Chinese are going to be running the world. Those kids are learning.
We're going to do better. We're going to start an education show on KSCO, maybe right after the Georgia show, and we can talk about education and healthcare. What do you think, MZ?
I like the idea. You and I have been talking about it for a while, so that's it's on the way to happening. Georgia, thanks for calling in. Appreciate it. Here's our next call. Now this will be Steve in Aptos. Welcome to the Saturday special with JE and MZ. Steve in Aptos.
Hello.
Hey, speak up a little bit, please. We can barely hear you.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
By the way, El Paso is across the border from Juarez, the murder capital.
There's something terribly wrong with your phone.
Down there. No, let me move a little bit here. Don't hang up. Is that better, MZ?
Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say El Paso is across the border from Juarez, Mexico, the murder capital of North America. It's a pretty rough area down there. So I want to salute that speaker who's working a very, a very ethnically diverse. Well, let me just say that's got to be a real challenge down there. My comment was, I grew up in Los Angeles in the 60s, and I went to school in Palos Verdes, and it was like going to school with the children they were the kids of all the employees from Boeing and Hughes Aircraft and stuff, and they had the same look and clothes and stuff as their parents. It was all college prep, and there was never a fight or a bad word heard. And the ability of teachers to address and teach kids at that level, as opposed to when I go by SoCal High School, it looks like they just let out the local, penitentiary as the kids walk across the street. Their pants are hanging down off their butts. It's like they've got this attitude, the whole gangland attitude. And I'm thinking, how do teachers address these? It's like the social skills of the kids are utterly different. I mean, you're dealing with kind of a Leave It to Beaver syndrome in some areas where the kids are polite and refined and well-mannered, and and then there's kids that they want to shoot you in the parking lot when you get off work.
Was there a question there, Steve? I'm sorry.
I'm wondering how do modern day instructors adapt to the social differences of the rough, basically the coarseness of what I'm seeing in young people. I'm seeing. I mean, is it my imagination, or they look pretty rough?
Well, first I want to go back to one of your comments. I'm going to have to give a little bit of love to El Paso. I am not from El Paso. I've lived all over the world, most of my life in Austin, Texas. And El Paso, for the last, 5 or 10 years, is the safest city in America with over 500,000 people. Look that stat up. So you're right. There has been a lot of violence in Juarez, but we love El Paso. It's a safe place to live. Actually, very diverse. I think it's the only border city from San Diego to Brownsville. It has about a 10% Anglo population, 6% African American, and very, very safe. So it has been a joy to live there. But let me talk about the issue of the kids have changed, and I think, in a sense, my answer would be it's irrelevant if they've changed. Our job as educators is to adapt to a changing society.
Exactly.
Whether it was the agrarian society of the 1800s to the manufacturing of the, pre and post World War. We had to adapt and change. So I think it's our job as adults, and that's the hard part about this business. Many people want to get into education and do the same thing they've always done, but yet the kids over the years have changed continually across the decades. Now, I will say that the change has probably been more dramatic in the last 20 because of technology and because of the way our culture has evolved. Think about the major technological changes in the world. They've literally happened mostly in the last 30 years, which is unbelievable.
We're 10 minutes from the top of the hour news here.
So I just think it's our job to adapt to the needs of the kids.
Steve, thanks for calling. We'll hold you over if you want. Same to Colonel Terry.
Can I just add?
Sure. KSCO Santa Cruz, Leeds, Monterey, San Jose.
CBS News. I'm Matt Piper. A war of words after the storm. President Trump calls San Juan's mayor a poor leader after she pleaded for help on the island.
If anybody out there is listening to us, we are dying, and you are killing us with the inefficiency and the bureaucracy.
The president also said via Twitter of Puerto Ricans they want everything to be done for them. Vice President Pence weighed in moments ago in an interview with CBS TV affiliate WKMG.
Now is not the time for anyone to play politics. Now is the time for us to focus on results.
CBS News correspondent David Begnaud is in Puerto Rico.
We were at the port a short time ago and saw trucks leaving the port. It's one of the first time we saw the exit gates full of trucks from side to side. But nothing at this point from Puerto Ricans. Quite frankly, a lot of them don't even have the cell phone service to read what the president's tweeting.
The U.S. is in direct communications with North Korea, seeking to start a dialogue with Pyongyang as its advancing nuclear and missile programs stoke fears of war. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson made the disclosure about the communications during a trip to China, and correspondent Ben Tracy was with him.
He said that there are lines of communication to Pyongyang. We're not in a blackout. He said that there's 3 channels to Pyongyang in between Pyongyang and Washington. He said we can talk to them. We can talk to them directly. We do talk to them. We have talked to them.
It's been a growing list of people leaving the Trump administration on their own accord or possibly being pushed out. Now it's Tom Price after some pricey flights.
The first Trump cabinet member to resign quit under pressure, straight from the top. Health Secretary Tom Price out by resignation after questions about his expensive travels on private jets. CBS News political director Steve Chagaris.
Tom Price was sort of on thin ice. You remember a couple of months ago, before the first Obamacare vote in the Senate, the president called out Tom Price on stage, saying if he didn't get enough votes in the Senate, then perhaps he would fire him then.
And Tom Price is gone now for other reasons. Tom Foti, CBS News, Washington.
A judge in Maryland has refused to block a price gouging law against pharmaceutical companies. CBS's Bill Rakoff.
A group representing makers of generic prescription drugs sought to stop the Maryland law from taking effect Sunday, calling it an unconstitutional overreach that will create market instability. While the judge denied that injunction, it is allowing a lawsuit by the Association for Accessible Medicines to proceed.
2 NYPD detectives have been placed on desk duty after an 18-year-old's accusation that she was handcuffed, put into their unmarked police van, and sexually assaulted. A lawyer for the Brooklyn teenager says the attack happened after a traffic stop about 2 weeks ago. Sources tell CBS News the detectives claim the sex was consensual. This is CBS News.
I'm Scott Tannen, founder of Boll & Branch, where you can get the world's most comfortable sheets for less than half of what you'd pay in the store. Our sheets are made from 100% organic cotton and get softer over time. Even 3 U.S. presidents have Boll & Branch sheets. Try them for 30 nights. If you don't love them, send them back for a full refund. Go to bollandbranch.com today for $50 off your first set of sheets, plus free shipping with promo code SLEEP. Spelled B-O-L-L and branch.com. That's bollandbranch.com, promo code SLEEP.
Are you looking for senior care for your mom or dad but don't know where to start? Hi, I'm Joan London with The Place for Mom. Nobody knows your parent or loved one better than you, and nobody knows senior living better than the experts at A Place for Mom. It's a free service, and we've helped thousands of families find the right place for their mom or dad. There's a place for answers, A Place for Mom. Call today.
Call A Place for Mom at 1-800-379-1174. That's 1-800-379-1174.
It must be, it has to be, With that big sound, it's gotta be KSCO.
You're listening to KSCO, serving Moss Landing, Marina, and Piscines.
Good morning. You're listening to AM 1080 KSCO Santa Cruz 1106. A beautiful Saturday morning. Hope everyone's having a great day. I'm Jason Struby. Let's get a look at your traffic conditions. Highway 1 southbound. A bit of traffic there as you head into Moss Landing. Salinas Road to about Struve Road, 5 miles an hour. Otherwise, Monterey County clear on the 1 north and south. Santa Cruz County looking good on Highway 1 as well. 17 northbound clear, southbound. A bit of traffic as you head into Los Gatos. Only backed up for a minute there as you pass Vasona. 101 starting to show signs of a slowdown into Morgan Hill. Otherwise, all clear from Salinas to San Jose and back. 68 clear, 156, 183, 129, 152. Highway 9 clear. Weather clear, sunny this afternoon. A high near 75 in Santa Cruz, 80s inland. Clear skies overnight. A low near 53. Tomorrow, sunny and hotter. We'll be approaching 80 degrees here in Santa Cruz. 11:06. Time for hour 2 of the Saturday Special with your host MZ.
Hi there, we're back. Hey, let's just without any further ado play the jingle. Yeah.
Oh, hello, darling. I hate to hang up on you, but I'm sorry, baby, but I have to go. It's time for that wonderful record show. I'd love to visit, but you'll have to call back. KSCO has the inside track.
I wish my brain had a greater capacity than it does. People keep texting me and emailing me links to things I should see. It never ends.
I'm sorry, baby, but I really gotta go to KSCO Radio. Bye.
I bet Troy's sending you links.
Yeah, and HPC. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, well, welcome back. No, not welcome back. Welcome to hour number 2 of the Saturday Special. Let's see. Who was it who was interested in being held over who hung up? So they're not there now. So, okay. Well, we're talking with J.E. Cabrera, Juan Eduardo Cabrera, Superintendent of Schools, El Paso, Texas. And he's in town here to further his quest to improve education by coming to the epicenter of where the world is being changed. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, took a couple days off work just to spend time with some innovators at different companies to look at how we can improve education and bring it into the 21st century.
So, excuse me, I was just drinking while he finished his sentence here. We have a number of people on hold. If you want to be one of them, you can call 479-1080 in area 831 and be on hold. Won't that be fun? Colonel Terry, one of the smartest men in the world, is on hold, but he's not now. Here he is. Hi, Terry. You're on with...
Am I there?
NMZ. Yeah, you're on.
Oh, gentlemen.
I think Colonel Terry called in July, if I remember correctly.
We have the same 6 people who call. That's the only. That's it. That's it.
How much do you make, Colonel Terry,
maybe 7
to call?
Well, I call when I have something relevant and intelligent to indicate, and I think I applaud your efforts to try and make education better and more effective, and I hope more efficient delivery. I've talked to educators here in Santa Cruz County, and they tell me the county is overwhelmed with illegal immigration and their children imposing, and has been for the last 35 years, increasingly imposing on the local school districts, especially places like Pajaro. And speaking of educated, supportive parents, which you indicated are needed, educated and supportive parents, we have the wrong people, clearly, having children they shouldn't be having because they are neither educated nor supportive nor able to provide for those children in other ways. Do you agree?
Well, look, here's my stance on that. I mean, I try to keep the politics of all of those issues outside of education. I have my hands full with what I'm doing. And for us right now, and Colonel, I'm not evading it, but let me tell you the situation. At our schools, and this is a law, we are not checking the immigration status. We have processes that you go through in terms of, bringing proof of residence through a lease or, and we do home checks. I mean, we do check, you bring a lease or you bring a, light bill or cable bill, whatever. And at this point in time, schools in America are not asked to look at the immigration status. So our position is that if you go through the process, and obviously I'm not involved in the registration process, but you show up at our schools, we're going to take care of you. And we do our best we can to engage you and educate you.
No, the focus of my comment is that we are being overwhelmed with impoverished children, and they're impoverished, undereducated, non-supportive, frequently non-English speaking children who are imposed on our school systems. And Pajaro Valley is one of those, where, again, the deterioration in the ability of the children to speak English, the failure of them to have adequate food and nutrition and adequate prenatal care, apparently, and then the failure of them to have supportive, educated parents is resulting in a decline in the quality of the entire student population, from the first grade to the 12th grade. That's the cost of illegal immigration, of people whose language is not English, who do not have educated, supportive parents, is deteriorating our school systems. It's not a function of... It's
Colonel,
an
we've had
observation of
immigrants
reality
in this country for 200 years from many different countries. And in California, by the way, I'm going to tell you, Los Angeles and San Francisco primarily, Spanish is no longer, in San Francisco for sure, and it's changing in some of the LA County schools. We no longer have Spanish as a dominant, non-English language. We've got so many different dialects of Asian languages, especially here. And there are more Asian children in San Francisco Unified than there are Hispanic kids by 2 times. And in LA County, they now have about 170 languages. And I know maybe we just weren't keeping the stats or paying attention, but for as long as I know and all the history that I know about, we've had to teach immigrant children with multi-languages for many, many years. So I don't think this is a relatively new issue. I think politically it's something we talk about more and look at more. But, net immigration, if you look at the last 5 years, under Obama and under Trump, we've got fewer immigrants coming from our southern borders than we've ever had.
We still are overwhelmed with children who are not qualified to be in our schools, who do not have educated, supportive parents, by the millions, even in California and certainly nationwide. And speaking operationally, in the 1960s and 70s, I remember California had the finest performance public schools in the country and perhaps the world, especially in the 60s. And that has deteriorated as we have absorbed more and more illegal immigrants and their children. I'm sorry they're having children they cannot provide for where they came from. But we should not provide them educational remedial help and all the welfare we're providing, it's not fair to those of us in California already here who pay the taxes. Do you agree?
Colonel, so let me just add, this is sort of a handoff, right? We have got to handle this in bigger buckets. I'm not, I am not, and I encourage all educators to not get involved in that. We've got our hands full educating whoever comes in the darn door. What I think we need to do, if those are your beliefs, those issues need to be taken up separately.
I believe those are my observations of reality.
I understand, but listen, I'm just telling you that for me, I've got all we can do to make schools better with whoever comes in the door. Then the legislature and other bodies need to decide who gets to come into the door. As far as I'm concerned, I don't care where you're from or where you grew up or how much money you have. If you are registered to go to school in our district, we're going to educate you, and that's it.
My next point is computer-based instruction. Couldn't we give the kids programmed learning and enforcement on computers, so everything from English to physics to math to history, they could learn with reinforcement on the computer to make sure they accomplish the learning objectives.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I do believe strongly that a blended learning approach, which includes technology and humans, is really the only is the only way that we're going to move at a faster pace and create more of a personalized learning education. So part of the reason that I'm here visiting with different folks is just trying to talk about what are the innovations and learn more about the innovations that we can use to exactly what you're saying. The learners of the future are going to have to go and understand how to learn online. That's just a reality. So you might as well teach them at a young age how to do that and do a blended learning environment. I personally don't believe that only online is good for kids, especially at a younger age or developing social skills and, talking to their peers and talking to a teacher, learn how to work with adults. But I think as they get older into their middle school and high school, a blended approach or maybe half and half is a great idea, because then you prepare them to learn on their own through technology and you prepare them for a technologically advanced world like we live in today.
Okay, Colonel Terry, thank you so much for your call. We're going now to Bon at Lake Tahoe. Hi, Bon.
Hey, Michael, how you doing?
Good. Speak up a little bit. You want to talk to J.E., I assume, yeah?
Yes, I do. I tell you, the lunacy of the last few calls has been entertaining. Thanks. A couple of quick things.
Now, wait a second. You're both laughing, and so that means you're agreeing. Oh, you don't want the camera on you anymore.
Put it on you for a little bit.
It is. I've got another one on me.
Oh, so
this people can look at, yeah.
I just got back from the gym and I have to be on video too? Come on.
But anyhow, Bon, so you and J.E. seem to share impressions of the previous callers.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's.
Now, what is your impression of the previous callers? Be specific, please.
I didn't call, Michael. I didn't call. I'm not going to give Georgia or Colonel
You're
Terry
the one
anyone.
who started it. You're the one who started it.
I said it was lunacy.
Okay.
But that's not
how many talk radio callers start the call by making a comment about the lunacy of the previous callers? You did, so I'm calling you on it.
Fine.
Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
It's just racism all the time. Thank you. Okay.
Racism. Racism.
Racism.
Oh, okay.
It's just racism all the time. What I wanted to call about is because this gentleman is obviously an expert in education, I want 10 seconds of background. As a courtesy to a genius friend of mine, I teach 2 of his 4 sons that are all genius level. I teach across the board aeronautics, mathematics, history. We are both involved in inventions that we both collaborate on. The guy is high level and he homeschools at the highest possible level. Having this experience, the number one, computer-aided teaching is a wonderful thing, but it is not the panacea that one would think. Even with the best equipment, unlimited money, and unlimited time, it is at best a 30 or 40% solution. It is not a 100% solution. You still need a human being to interact with the child, to basically put the information that is provided
within the last 24 hours, guys. I read an article that I stumbled upon or someone sent to me saying that the top people in Silicon Valley send their kids to computerless schools.
Computerless schools. That's
Yeah.
a new phenomenon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, my guy doesn't allow phones. The computers are used in a limited way, mostly bringing up YouTube videos that are specific to a particular subject. For instance, when I'm teaching aeronautics, I use a whiteboard, thank you. And when I'm teaching mathematics, I use a whiteboard because it's more effective. We can change instantly and adapt to whatever questions are coming up. Yesterday, I gave a lecture on history and on economics. It was based on, 50 years of reading, and no computer could have ever have anticipated the children's questions, nor could have adapted quickly. I think there's a place for computer-aided learning, especially with the more rote-like subjects that are more repeat. But in the general idea of trying to teach children how to think, which is a real failure in this country because they teach to tests, I think that a human being is absolutely essential. And frankly, I do this as a favor to my friend, but I don't think there's a teacher in the United States of any decent level that's worth less than $100,000 a year, because I tell you, it's the toughest job on earth.
Well, well, first of all, I think we're in vigorous agreement on the blended learning approach. I do believe that we need technology in order to create a more personalized learning, but we have to have humans. I mean, if you listen to one of the early callers, I don't think that an 100% online education would ever be successful, and we've tried that in some states, and it hasn't been. It's proved out that it doesn't work. I think the human interaction is critical, and the guiding and support and driving the curriculum that an individual teacher can bring, I think, is perfect, a perfect mix of where the future needs to go. And I think it's also what helps kids develop is a combination of some independent time on the computer, some direct teach with teachers, and then teachers supporting, facilitating a collaborative approach so that they get to learn to work with their peers, which is very common in the workplace today. It doesn't matter what sector you work in aerospace or in technology, or even if you're at most government offices, you have to work with people to be successful. There's no other way. So teaching all those skills is critical. And I agree. I think we've talked earlier about making districts with use of technology much more efficient on the operations side, and then turning this over so that the highest paid folks are teachers, not the folks that aren't in the classroom, because it is a very difficult job. Yeah, and so that's what we're going to do. And I want to, for the rest of the years that I've got to work on this, I'm going to give it my all to try to make that switch and advocate for that. I think that's the way we need to go.
Can I ask one last question, please?
Sure, go ahead, Bon.
Sir, you're an educated man. I've been listening to you the first hour. I'm quite impressed, and Michael knows me well enough to know that I'm not impressed by too many people.
Oh no!
It's been my no, it's the truth. I have found.
I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing by saying, "Oh no." I should have said, "Oh yes." Excuse me.
The thing is that from what I've seen, I deal with sometimes at a maximum of 4 boys, okay, who are all like top level IQ. I mean, just off the charts. Yet the behavioral characteristics, the notions of entitlement and such, because their father is quite wealthy, sometimes interferes. My experience now tells me that a woman or a man standing in front of 25 or 30 kids is absolutely ludicrous. The idea of trying to maintain discipline and trying to actually teach anybody, you have to create almost a prison environment to make it happen. So the question is, in an ideal world for you, sir, how many kids would be in a class?
This is a big struggle we have as we're trying to drive more money into the classroom. There have been a number of studies on student-teacher ratio, and actually, what you see is that, and I'll send you a few of these, MZ, and you can send them on to our caller. There's data on both sides, and it has been clear. I think the financial challenges are what drive us to have larger classes. I would agree, though, that it is difficult to manage a large class, and especially when you've got kids that are, they're different than we were, right? They're not as easy to sit down and put in rows, and we just did it because our parents would beat the crap out of us if we didn't, and now kids are a little more independent, let's just say. So I think that working in collaborative teams where kids are actually working with each other and you have a little bit more, I like to call creative chaos, when kids are working together and creating together, learning together, that I think is a classroom of the future. That's the way we help teachers manage groups of kids. One of the things that we're doing, for example, and we do an integrated curriculum, and we'll put 50 kids in a class and 2 teachers instead of 1 on 25. And what we find when we do that in these larger collaborative classrooms, tables and chairs, no desks, we actually find that it's easier for a teacher to manage, even though the ratios are the same, but it's easier for teachers to manage because they facilitate and help the small groups that are working together on the curriculum, rather than a teacher trying to control everybody from the front in a lecture format. Which from an engagement standpoint, we find that the kids aren't really, they're not like us. They're not going to sit and listen. Heck, let's be honest. I go to professional development with adults. None of us want to sit and listen to lectures for more than 2 or 3 hours either. So why do we blame our kids for not wanting to do that? So
I can't make it through 2 or 3 minutes.
I think part of the answer is a collaborative learning, project-based learning approach. But certainly fewer kids would always be better, in my opinion. It's just that the stats and the research that I've read doesn't necessarily prove that out.
The thing is, though, the question was, I understand the economics. I'm
Yes,
just
sir.
asking, in your mind, and I have two things, and I'll get out of MZ's way. 2 things. Number one, Texas is a huge market for textbooks, yet Texas is notorious for having misstated facts, rewriting history, and basically feeding these kids a bunch of propaganda. That's number one. Number two, going back to the original question, in an ideal world, what do you think the ratio is? 10, 15, 20? I'm just wondering what, based on your experience.
Probably between 15 and 20 is what I would prefer. If we had that, I think that'd be a manageable number from the economics, and I think something that would work if we stayed south of 20. I really do believe that. We've got to get fewer dollars spent outside the classroom. Look, out of the 80 largest school districts in the country, they spend 45% of their money outside the classroom. That's what I want to try to do from the operations side, to make sure that that number's more like a 70-30 number. And I think that'll help us reduce class sizes and help pay teachers more, which means that somebody like you with your background, if you could retire, think about this, if you could retire from a successful career in aerospace engineering and go make $120,000 a year as a teacher in retirement, you do it, and then we get a smart person like you to get in front of our kids. That's what we need, our best and brightest to be teachers.
How do you like that, Vaughn? So anyhow,
I think that'd be marvelous.
How could I thank you for calling 479-1080, which no one can do now, and get through because we are totally jammed. But as soon as you hang up, that will open up a line, and someone else can presumably slip right in. Okay?
Right.
Hey, thanks for calling. Take care. Bye-bye. Take next. Okay, well, that is Joe and Salinas. Wow, you've waited a long time, but you're on now, Joe. Hello? Going once. Going twice. Okay, Joe's gone. Fox and so he's waited like almost an hour. And we finally took his call, and he was well. He wasn't paying attention. You have to listen to the radio. You have to listen to the radio because you never know when we're going to come up and we're going to take your call, and then you're going to feel like a fool for waiting for like an hour, and then you lose your place.
Duly noted.
Okay, Fox and SoCal, you're on.
Good morning, Michael. Thank you for being there. I'm going to make this very brief. I work with a lot of parents. 85%, 75% of us who have been sucked unjustifiably into the Department of Health and Human Services under the guise of Child Protective Services. The mandatory reporters that are in schools, which are teachers, aides, principals, health, and I understand now they have social workers at schools. We are having to arm our children with notes and business cards that plainly state that they will not be interviewed by anyone without the presence of family, advocate, or attorney. So I would like his input because I know Texas now has trial by jury for parents, and we're hoping for trial by jury for parents in dependency hearings. So what is your input on, we call them kid Nazis, protecting our families from unsubstantiated basically lies by CPS in order to get as many kids into the system and make as much money as possible. I'll take my answer off air. Thank you.
Thank you for calling. I wish you hadn't gone off the air. I actually wanted to clarify that a bit. I think.
Oh, I'm still here.
Okay, good. Just more specifically, are we talking about a child maybe that has special needs, or that because as you know, the average child, if you're just in the classroom, I mean, we don't have enough additional resources, and the additional resources are typically focused on kids with special needs or learning needs or other disabilities. Is that your situation with your child, or
no,
can you just clarify a bit more?
It's with an allegation of abuse or neglect. And
okay.
I'm the first one to say that any child that is abused or neglected must be rescued, must be protected. It's the other, 75 to 85% where the families need help at some level. It's these unjustified, untrue filings made by CPS in order to get as many children into the system to make as much money as they can.
Well, we certainly look. I would not advocate in any way. We have a lot of issues that occur in schools. I mean, at the end of the day, we're just humans, right? So people make mistakes, and people sometimes go off, and that's why we have the rules to bring that back. And we would not advocate somebody intentionally approaching a child and creating issues such as that. You're right. I do think. I mean, we need to be advocates for our children in schools, and that. This whole customer service experience, and some folks don't like me to use the word customer, but I'm thinking about schools in a different way. I'm not thinking about this sort of forced march like it used to be, right? I think that we really, with the advent of charter schools and private schools and all this competition, we need to really think about the experience of families and students in schools. And some of that's going to happen with technology, so we can get immediate feedback and know what's going on and make sure that we, look, 99 times out of 100, when I terminate an employee, it's because a parent or somebody else in the community let me know that something was heading in a certain direction, and we investigate. And sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. So that interaction and that connection to the community is critical for us to make good decisions about staff. And we're not perfect. For example, we have 9,000 employees in my district. You're going to have bad apples everywhere. We know that. So our job is to try to find the bad apples and get them away from children as soon as we possibly can. And I think this just sort of falls into that camp, in my opinion.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
It's just we don't want teachers and aides and principals to be accomplices to child stealing and selling by DHHS. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for your call to 479-1080. The people on hold, stay there for a little bit. We're going to depart for a sort of, I'm going to read an entire email here, something I never do, but Pete has sent an email here that I want to read so that J.E. can respond. MZ, I can't call from where I am, but wanted to weigh in. Unfortunately, politics and various agendas have made their way into the education system. As a parent with 2 children now in public schools, I can offer some facts to this statement. I have 1 child in K and 1 in high school. As far as my high schooler, he did experience racism because he is white. He was attacked simply because of that. He has also had leftist-leaning opinions pushed upon him last year, and it has happened already this year as well. Politics and teachers' political views do not belong in the classroom. A couple of years ago, he even brought home an assignment that was basically the teaching of Islam. I actually sent the assignment to Georgia and Sam. As far as my daughter, the kinder student, I went to enroll her when she is supposed to be going. I went to enroll her where she is supposed to be going, and I walked into the office and everyone was speaking Spanish. As a parent, this was an immediate turnoff, and I demanded a transfer. My transfer was approved, but the school she was transferred to was so overwhelmed with transfers that they had to hire additional teachers. With that said, I am curious to know the economic impacts of having to teach children in their native languages. I'm also curious on how this impacts the ability of American children to learn, because we do have an influx of non-English speaking students that are keeping our students back because of language barriers. Georgia and Colonel Terry both bring valid points. I can also say that the less government involved in the education system, the better. I will cite Common Core and California's vaccination policy, which I strongly oppose. The California Constitution does make English the official language of California. These students and faculty should speak English and English only. By the way, I am very engaged with staff and teachers at both of my kids' schools, and that's from Pete. Okay, Pete, what do you expect? What do you expect Juan to say? What are you going to say, Juan?
That was a long email.
No, it wasn't all that long. It was longer than we generally read, that's for sure.
Why don't you pick it apart and tell me what you want me to talk about?
Look, obviously, you're going to agree that political opinions don't belong in the classroom.
Absolutely.
You know, either K through 12 or even in college, for that matter, unless it's a private college.
Yes.
I guess, right? Okay. So that said, do you believe that there is quite a bit of politics from the instructors in our schools today?
You know, as I said earlier,
how would you know? You're not there.
It'd be hard to know, but
Yeah.
I do know that, you know, in terms of the standards that each state sets, the teachers are you know, the accountability for them is to get kids prepared for those standards and make sure that the kids you know, address each of the standards so that kids understand them and they can move on to the next standard. You know, if you're wasting a lot of time in politics, you're not doing a good job. And not only do I think it's inappropriate, but you're not sticking with the curriculum. So a teacher would not be wise to do that. I think, so certainly that would not be something we'd advocate. We don't know. I mean, if we find out, we typically find out from kids telling their parents, and then we'll do an investigation. But I would say that the vast majority, 90+% of teachers aren't doing that. But we have found that. I mean, I'm not going to say that we haven't found folks with their personal agendas, political and otherwise, that try to push that on kids, and then the kids tell the parents, and if we get enough reports, we will remove those teachers. I mean, we're quick about that.
All right. And what about about what he talks about having to transfer his kid to an area, to a school where there were so many other such transferees?
Well, you know what? I mean, that's the beauty of public schools or charter schools, is you can vote with your feet now. In the old days, you know, in our day, you lived on XYZ Street and you went to ABC school and that was it. You didn't have a choice. Now most school districts like mine were open enrollment districts. You can live anywhere and go there. Charter schools will take any child as long as you can get there. So vote with your feet. I mean, obviously I don't condone what I do believe that at our schools, you know, unless somebody needs to speak to you in a different language, that is, we speak English in the administrative offices, and then we have our classrooms where there's bilingual classrooms. We speak to those kids in their language, whatever their language is, to help them transition to English and hopefully maintain their language so they learn two languages, right? So that's part of the education process.
That's been a strong debate for many years. Yeah, should there or should there not be bilingual education? And we're not going to get into that here.
I don't mind touching on this, because let me tell you this. I think one of the biggest mistakes we're making about English only is that the cognitive differentiator for our children, should they learn multiple languages. In many countries that I've lived and traveled in, kids learn 3 to 5 languages, right? I think it's similar to playing an instrument or learning to play a sport, right? The cognitive differentiator and what it means for a child in their young and future lives by learning multiple languages. So this is not about bilingual education in terms of, you know, pandering to their home language, whatever it is, because that's what many, you know, political folks will tell me. I think we're so caught up in that rage of English only that we've robbed our children in America the opportunity to speak multiple languages, which is going to help them academically, cognitively, intellectually make a difference in their life. I learned Spanish and English as a child, and as I went on and worked abroad, I was able to get pretty good in 3 other languages, and I wouldn't have done that without the core of the 2 languages as a child. So I just believe that if we don't expose our kids to fine arts, to instruments, to extracurricular activities, you know, and to languages, I think that we're leaving a part of the brain dormant, and we're not developing kids to their fullest potential. So that's my issue. Has nothing to do with politics of English only, but I do think sometimes we're so blinded by that we don't take the time to offer that to other kids.
Okay. Let's go back to the phones. I'm going to take the next, and who is that? Why, it's Wendy and Ben Lomond. Hey, Wendy, you're on with Janie.
It is Wendy and Ben Lomond. Excuse me, I have to clear my throat. I wanted to say something.
What I have is contagious.
Throat clearitis. Yes, we're professional enough to know when we can be professional and clear our throats. To get back to the huge Las Vegas-sized light bulb that went off over my head with Colonel Terry. I didn't hear Georgia. And I did hear the Vic 20 guy who was talking about our lunatics, and you don't talk about our lunatics badly, okay, Mr. Vic 20? And if he doesn't know what that means, he definitely has a problem. But we have a disruption of the standard gradation of family percentages in the region of Watsonville. There is a huge section of Watsonville that is all these older homes in 1960s kind of Daly City Pacific alike, and they're for seniors only. I was trying, I looked at a bunch, and finally I'm like, wait a minute, all these are saying you can't live here. Why can't I live here? I'm too young? Which makes it really, really hard to get anything voted to have a decent school district, which makes a haven for second language students, which is exactly what Watsonville is, which is basically the Pajaro Valley. There's not that much left, else in there, so it becomes a huge point-of-finger example of what I think is more like a prison system. I had to do, the saddest thing was the Watsonville yearbook photos. I was a printer, and a wonderful job. But I got to see, things that scared me coming from an extraordinarily well-funded school district. Where,
which one is that? Which one?
Oh, that was way far away from California. But the Watsonville High was like, there was nothing there for them to learn with. And I'm like, well, that's where you start with your computer learning. They don't have anything there to begin with. And you've got some of the best Wi-Fi out there with the, that signal coming off Mount Madonna. So that was where I.
Oh, you mean etheric networks?
There's a bunch of them. I know Etheric is one of your sponsors, and I've heard very good things about them. But Crucio also does it, and it gets you up and download. So you can do some amazing things like, like this Edu Creations thing. I think it's .com, but it's Edu Creations, and it's a whiteboard, but it's digital, and you can put the photo on there and point things at it, and you record your voice, and you can upload it. And me and my son, did a review of a video game, and we thought that we posted it, and Alex Jones is on our connected kinda, and he just responded in a way that made us feel like, wow, he agrees with us. He thought the same thing about that game. It was an app game that but you don't get that on a whiteboard in a room all by yourself.
Okay, do you have a particular question for J.E.?
I just wanted to point out that when people look at a problem one way, and I hope you can I think we're going to broaden it now because my light bulb is now becoming a big umbrella, and it's like going over the problem of if there is a problem with the percentages of families they're voting on the school district, does it lower the school district, thus bringing in an influx of people who are willing to settle with less?
I think the answer is yes, right, J.E.?
Yes.
Okay. That was easy. All right.
but by the way, no, I do agree. You're talking about whiteboard and technology. The only comment I want to make is I think a blended approach is better. I think that we do need a bit of whiteboard, but certainly a good dose of technology. We found that's, I think too much of one is probably not the best for kids, and of course every kid's different. But
you can have the best teacher in the world in the classroom with that kid, and you just need someone to tell them to go to that website to look at it at the time they need it, and they don't understand things. Then you send them to the lab. You need a tour guide, not the tour. Right. We can't hire an amazing tour for everyone, but we can hire someone who can tell them where to find the stuff and give them basic
Wendy,
hands-on
thanks
stuff.
for your call. We got
Thank you.
we got 4 more people on hold here. Want to get to every one of them before the end of the program. Freddie in Happy Valley, you're up next.
J.E., I really want to thank you for your mindful contribution to this difficult discussion, and I don't envy your challenge. I have 2 teenage daughters in the Los Gatos school system, which is a very affluent school system. They basically have an endless amount of resources. And the level of social programming is absolutely stunning and intense and frightening, and I would have kept them out of it. They've gone K through 12, but that's not why I called. Georgia really is on the money. Why I called was the pressure that's put on these kids. My oldest daughter just graduated with honors, 5 AP classes, section leader in marching band. She's now at an Ivy League school. She's burned out on Adderall. She was up till 4 a.m. every night, and this is what's happening.
What's happening?
You're talking about the pressure.
These kids are dosing on drugs in a very competitive environment. This is what's happening in affluent communities to compete.
No, that is definitely a problem. I mean, one of the issues that we talk about is, we assume that the issues with drug abuse and alcohol abuse are in our communities of poverty, but it's actually the opposite. Statistically, we've got more serious problems in our more affluent communities with these issues, and I think it's something we definitely need to keep our eye out for, and also a lot of mental health issues related to that in terms of depression and whatnot, with drugs and alcohol, and it is surprising to many to know. No, that you're right. The pressure
in these communities to really hyper excel.
Well, but I think a lot of that comes from the parents, right? That they, in some of these communities, and I've lived in some where the parents are so competitive with each other, and it sort of drives off of each other. I don't think a lot of that necessarily comes.
You can blame it on the parents who actually tried to. I'm probably the only person in my neighborhood that doesn't worship education. I just think it's important, but it's a strange thing. I myself never pushed it. My kids feel they're in that system. We're in this environment, and they have to compete with their peers. So you can't simply push it on parents either, because there's plenty of that, but there's plenty that doesn't jive with.
Well, but I mean, but think about the sources, right? So at the end of the day, you've got SAT scores and GPAs, and then you've got competitive parents, and I'm just saying, as a parent of 3 public school kids and 2 teenagers just graduated and still one in 8th grade, and my observation as a parent, and then now as somebody that runs a school district, I think that it's sort of something we need to come together with the parents and the kids, because I do think that your more educated parents drive your kids to do better and better and better. And then we get kind of stuck in that system where you're looking at SAT scores and all that. I think you did the right thing. Look, if you did not pressure your kids and you sort of help them get better and help them work through, within the grasp of what they could achieve. Of course, you always want kids to do more, but I think, it's on both of us is what I'm saying.
Well,
the
my
pressure
youngest daughter is absolutely collapsing another way. Just so happens that my oldest daughter naturally thrives and is very competitive and excels on her own. My youngest daughter is actually crumbling under this environment, and so everybody's experience is different.
So I do think, though, in that situation, so let me just, if I give you some unsolicited advice for your child, that there are a number of other schools that approach education differently, and you have the opportunity to do that. I think you're right. I think that education can be a one-size-fits-all place, very much so. And I'd like to try to be part of a generation that changes that into a more personally engaging situation for every child, so that we take their individual needs, not the homogenized approach. And the fact that your daughter fits into it doesn't make the system right. It's just that she happens to fit into it, right? It's her DNA. I've got 3 kids. They're all different. I know the situation. But if I'm in your shoes...
I've had the time. I have a teaching farm in the Santa Cruz Mountains. I actually have an arrangement with some homeschoolers, so I'm around them a fair amount. And they are different than the kids.
Absolutely.
On Johnson Avenue in Los Gatos, California, brother, and there's like 70 of them on our street, and they are way more centered, and they're not programmed. And it's a frightening, complex issue, and I so appreciate your effort. I promise, I can guarantee that you didn't stay up until 4 a.m. doing homework, and you've excelled, brother, and done well for yourself. You're a bright, articulate human being, and I so appreciate
Thank you very much. I'm actually a C student from a California public school, and it turned out okay for me. So I think we just need to teach our kids to do the best you can, but life doesn't end at 18. It just begins.
That's
okay. Hey, thank you very much, Freddie from Happy Valley. Appreciate your call to 479-1080. Next is Jim in Felton about school bullies. Go ahead, Jim. You're on.
Hi. Actually, I wasn't going to talk about school bullies. I did want to talk about boys in school, but I just wanted to make a real quick comment before I do, which is that I'm currently taking a class in quantum mechanics from MIT, and I'm taking it online, and it's free via edX. And it's exactly the same course that the students take. In fact, it's basically a camera on the back of the class. I can see the top of the heads of the MIT students that zooms in on the blackboard. So I think that the future really is online, and I think what you're going to eventually become is online education, with in combination with coaches, not really teachers, but just coaches to help with tutoring and problem solving and stuff. I think this model where, for every 30 people you have to have a lecturer standing up there, and everybody sits for the same 1 hour, the same 5 hours a week, at the same time of the day, no matter what your the type of person you are.
Or even if it's 15, as J.E. suggested. I
Well,
know what you're saying. That model is on its way out, probably, right? Just like
300.
The model of appointment listening on radio and TV. Everything's archived now. If you don't happen to be available to watch the program when it's being broadcast, no big deal. You just go into the archive and do it on your schedule. So
absolutely. No, I do agree with you.
They have.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, they have the data. edX and Coursera have far more data than the public education does, because they know exactly who's online when, who's taking what problems when, who makes a mistake and doesn't, who's passing the midterms, what problems they didn't get right. They have the data is all in there. And one of the things that they've found is the optimum length of time for a lecture is 7 minutes. So you watch a 7-minute lecture, you do some problems, watch another 7-minute lecture, do some problems. The longest lectures are like 20 minutes, whereas in the schools it's 1 hour for every class. And most of that hour...
He's talking about the Twitterizing of curricula. All right. Hey, thank you very much. We got a lot of other callers. We want to get to them. Appreciate your call to 479-1080. Jim in Felton. Okay, next caller is Janet in Soquel. Janet, you're on.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm coming at this as a student in my day, as a parent, and as a former part-time employee in the public school system. I first want to apologize for the two early callers with their own agenda. I want to tell you I appreciate your view that teachers should be the higher paid and administrators not so much, or at least less administration. I've thought that for years. My question is, you started the hour out talking about like testing the students and how it's been overblown, and with this idea that teachers should be paid more, and some of it may be on merit. I'd like to know, I've been thinking about this for years, and I cannot for the life of me come up with a solution. How would teachers be tested or evaluated for merit pay or even for performance? Nothing I've seen yet has done a good job.
So that's a difficult issue, and that is, I think a lot of this is going to. Here's a challenge with doing that is some districts have tried to use test scores only, but then of course that turns into teaching to the test, and we don't want that. So I think it's some sort of a combination between, obviously you have to get your degree and be prepared to teach, but it's going to have to be some competency based, some skills that you bring to the table, almost like a badging system, like we call it micro-credentialing. Similar to, you get an accounting degree, then you're a CPA, and you go, but then you have to continually show that you have that skill. But I think you've got to do it in the classroom. I think this whole, testing somebody to be an accountant or a lawyer and bringing that skill and substantive knowledge is different than saying, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Teacher, you've got all of that, now come into the classroom. Because the problem with teaching is it's about human engagement, not just about the content and subject matter knowledge you have in your head, right? As opposed to lawyers or accountants. I mean, really, you go to a good lawyer, even if the lawyer is not the best person in the world. If you heard they're a great lawyer, you're probably going to put up with a little bit of attitude and somebody you don't like if you know they're going to solve your problem. Same with an accountant. See, their subject matter expertise carries the day. The issue with teachers is we need them to be subject matter experts, but it's their interaction with human beings that really makes them great. So that's what we've got to look at, and we've got to look at videos and technology and try to figure out how engagement of children and how, not how well you teach, but how well students learn under your tutelage is going to have to be the key. So I don't have your answer yet, I'm sorry, but that's what we're going to work on.
Thank you, Janet. Here's Rick in Oakdale. You're on, Rick.
Let me get you off speaker. Okay, here we go. Hey, didn't catch the gentleman. I've been on the road. Didn't catch the gentleman's name, but he was on a couple of weeks ago, or in July, you say, or something like that.
Yeah, in July, right?
July.
Okay, I caught the back end of that one too. Okay, as a superintendent, were you appointed by the board of the school board?
Yes, sir. There are a number of states that actually elect their superintendents, but in Texas, we are appointed by the managers or the trustees. In Texas.
Okay, and they're elected.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that kind of shoots a hole in politics and education. If your school board is elected, they have to follow the law. They swear to that law when they get sworn in. They appoint you, and they anticipate and hope you follow the law. But now I'm going to give you an idea, and this will bolster Colonel Perry and George's point. If a kid walks in, an illegal, and you say, I got to teach them because they walk in the door. Okay. But the school board dictates policy. They can set policy. They don't have to ask Washington. They don't have to ask the Department of Education. They set their policy for their district. Now, if the policy is that right at that point you have 100 laptops sitting at the back of the room, all of these laptops have a teachable software to teach kids English from Spanish. Some of them will be Asian to English. And you hand them out and you tell them, here's your thing, here's your tutor, she'll take you and show you how to use the computer, and then you will leave, and when you're proficient at English and you take the test online, then you can come back and register in school. That would stop your horrendous issue that you have with the illegals. Now, the ones that want an education will go and do that. The ones that don't will take and sell the computer because they only brought their kids to school to eat. So that's my idea for your blended computer versus human experience in education.
Rick, how can we thank you for that idea?
Let me tell you about California in 1967 when I got here. I got here and I walked into this Soquel High School and I said, they go, what were you taking, architectural drafting? And I said, no, I had already taken that. They said, were you taking mechanical drawing? I said, no, I'd already taken that. And they said, well, we only offer architectural and mechanical. I said, well, I'm in descriptive geometry, and I just finished another type of drawing system. 4 different drawing systems were offered in Idaho, and California was already behind in 1967. So I don't agree with your host about how great California schools were, because they're not. They were behind in 1967. So we'll talk to you later, MZ.
Okay, thank you. Here's Donnell in Aptos. Donnell, sorry.
I just wanted to explain to you, I have 5 granddaughters, and I asked my granddaughter, who was in 5th grade last year, well, how do you think you had as far as teaching in 5th grade? And she said, well, I have to be careful. I don't want to say my teacher was, say, stupid. But what I will say is that I think that I've gone 5 weeks with no homework, and so maybe she's just plain lazy. But I've gone to school to learn, and I don't feel I've received an education for a 5th grader. Wow. And what I want to be when I grow up is an astrophysicist. I don't even know if my teacher teaching 5th grade knows what that is. But she said, I believe that when I go to school, it is the responsibility of whatever grade I'm in that teacher be either a man or a woman interested in teaching me the most I can learn in that year. And it's 5th grade. I'm going to be going to 6th grade, and I get to go to middle school. I am so excited. And I said, why are you excited? She said, because if I had one teacher, I would have to learn from that one teacher, but now I'm going to have 6. And if I get one that doesn't really want to be a teacher, I have the opportunity to have 4 or 5 that may be willing to teach me so I can become intelligent.
Great. Smart kid. Anyhow, last caller, Mary in Santa Cruz. I'm sorry we don't have much, but we're getting you on. Mary. Okay, that's it. So Mary wasn't there either, so drop that call. I want to relate something that gives me time because we don't, just barely enough time here. I was on an airplane ride between San Jose and Los Angeles one day in the 70s. And it turns out that the guy in the seat next to me was the then chancellor of the University of California, Santa Cruz campus. And I told him, I said, I went to UCSC and I felt like it was my 4-year college was a waste of time. What? He was devastated. I said, waste of time and money. What'd you say?
Mary's back. She said she got cut off.
She didn't get cut off.
Okay.
She did get cut off because she wasn't there. Anyhow, so I said, wherever I am today, I would have been there 4 years sooner if I hadn't gone to UCSC. And I still feel that way. And it's such a shame. Now, if I was in engineering or something, I'm sure I couldn't have said that, and we wouldn't say that today. Anyhow, that's it. J.E., thanks for being with us. We're going to have you on a lot more, and we're working on that ongoing project. Jason, thank you very much for a stellar job, and we will see you next week. KSCO Santa Cruz, Salinas, Monterey, San Jose.
That's all, folks.
All over the world, we are dying here.
The vice president spoke with CBS TV affiliate WKMG, saying Mayor Cruz should turn the focus.
It is frustrating, I expect, to millions of Americans to hear rhetoric coming out from some in Puerto Rico, particularly the mayor of San Juan, instead of focusing on results.
Correspondent David Begnaud is in Puerto Rico speaking with other officials on the ground there.
One of the things that I was able to ask the governor at the port was his reaction to what the president tweeted.
I read on this, it's in the context of the mayor of San Juan. He was saying something in the context of the mayor of San Juan wanting everything done for her. But I concur with you. The spirit of the people of Puerto Rico is great. It's fantastic. We're resilient people.
A war of words from North Korea to the U.S. Reporter Don Kirk from Seoul.
North Korea's Asia-Pacific Peace Committee warned the North will turn the U.S. into a sea of flames, and President Trump's reckless behavior will harden the will of the army and people. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson in Beijing said the U.S. is talking to North Koreans through our own channels, but North Korea must give up its nuclear program.
Tom Price is out. Until yesterday, he was a member of Donald Trump's cabinet, but he had racked up quite a bill to the tune of $1 million on private and military planes for government work, and we were paying for it. He offered to pay back $50,000, then resigned. Political analyst Leonard Steinhorn.
Tom Price was embarrassing him through these disclosures on his travel and his trips and what he was charging the taxpayers. That infuriates Donald Trump. It may be called a resignation, but it was probably a resignation with a big push from Donald Trump.
It is back to an odd number on the Supreme Court. Newest member Neil Gorsuch and company are all together for the first time Monday, and they have some big cases ahead of them, as CBS senior legal analyst Andrew Cohen tells us.
One case that I think transcends ideology is a case out of New Jersey that every sports fan will be watching closely. New Jersey wants to allow sports betting and is fighting a federal law that seems to preclude it from doing so. A ruling in the state's favor would open up more sports betting around the country.
Thousands of demonstrators in Barcelona opposed to an upcoming independence referendum for Catalonia are marching through the city today. Barcelona's been the site of several pro-independence rallies in the build-up to tomorrow's vote. This is CBS News.
I'm Scott Tannen, founder of Boll & Branch, where you can get the world's most comfortable sheets for less than half of what you'd pay in the store. Our sheets are made from 100% organic cotton and get softer over time. Even 3 U.S. presidents have Boll & Branch sheets. Try them for 30 nights. If you don't love them, send them back for a full refund. Go to bollandbranch.com today for